Yeah, I thought we took a pen out, and I was like, where'd it go?
Good morning, everyone. I'm glad to see the Board of Ed is beginning to get a larger following. It's a delight to see the room filling up. We'll start selling tickets next month. The best show in Richmond. Okay. Thank you, Francisco. I appreciate that chuckle. All right, we're going to have a moment of silence followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, those of you who watch us often know that we now have a new board member, Dr. Tammy Mann. Welcome. Don't know if you want to take this opportunity to say a few words. You don't have to, but we'd be delighted if you did.
Well, there it is.
That's right. Welcome to the hazing ritual. Yes.
Thank you so very much, President Gecker, to the members of the board and all of those who are here today. I'm very delighted to have an opportunity to serve on this board and to ensure that the needs of all children across the Commonwealth are being well considered as we deliberate matters that come before the board. It's an honor to have an opportunity to serve, and I'm looking forward to our work together.
We are delighted to have you. Okay, I hope you all have had a chance to review the minutes from the July 24, 25 meetings of the board. Is there a motion to either approve them or amend them? Thank you, Dr. Duran. Second by Ms. Atkinson. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Okay. Dr. Wilson. You've got it. Yeah.
President Gecker, members of the board, and those here. This morning, it is my honor to recognize Gina Keller on her retirement from the Virginia Department of Education as Assistant Superintendent for Learning. Gina has recently retired to spend more time with her parents and family after nearly 40 years of service to public education. Gina, please join me up here. Since 2017, Gina has served as Assistant Superintendent for Learning, where she worked tirelessly with school divisions across the Commonwealth, universities, and professional organizations to advance deeper learning for Virginia students. Gina originally joined VDOE in the Department of Teacher Education and Licensure, where her position for professional learning became her trademark as she worked to inspire educators to continue to learn. Prior to joining VDOE, Gina served as superintendent of Fluvanna County Public Schools and then a number of other positions, including as a teacher, school counselor, assistant principal, and central office instructional roles. I met Gina actually about 15 years ago when I actually saw her presenting at WELV, Women Education Leaders in Virginia. And it was in that interaction, that passive interaction for me, I recognized her passion for learning, but her passion for children and for people. And then we had the good fortune to become colleagues as superintendents. And she continued with that energy and that excitement. And when you see Gina, when you interact with her, it's very clear that she has an unbounded energy, and excitement for the potential that every child has. And she's been so kind to share that passion with us. She's always performed her work with utmost integrity, and we thank her for her tireless devotion in the professional manner and extend our warmest wishes to her for and in her retirement. I'd like to recognize Gina's husband, Larry, who's here with her, and her daughter, Lauren, also here with us to join for this special occasion. Gina, on behalf of the board, I'd like to present you with a resolution upon the occasion of your retirement and wish you all the very best from all of us.
Of course. So thank you. Oh, this is beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you. I did not expect this, so thank you so much. And 39 years. But so I've retired for 2 weeks, and I will say now I'm refiring up to take on part-time, looking at part-time opportunities to really further the work that truly and genuinely I am saying to the Board of Education with Dr. Lane that you have opened the doors for Virginia. And so I'm excited. I told Dr. Lane, I sent him a little email, and I'll probably, well, I know I'll stay in contact with Dr. Lane and text him quite often, just to let him know, that without a doubt that I'm still willing to serve the children of Virginia. That's why we're here. They're the vulnerable ones, and we have got to open doors. And so proud to be associated with such a fine group of people at the Department of Ed. But a strong commitment to really moving the needle and turning the ship and all those cliche things that we say about change. But thank you, Board of Education, for the work that you've done thus far. I mean, what a tremendous visible statement you give every day to our communities, that you love our kids, and that's what it's about. So thank you so much. And yes, I think Lauren and Larry and my whole family, I've got a huge family. Everybody wanted to come. I didn't know if there'd be enough seats. So, but seriously, just thank you, because they know that through me, they see the love that you have for kids as well. So thank you. Let's keep rolling. Thank you.
Gina, before we do pictures, I just also want to take a second. We've had, I think, like 4 retirement parties for you now, but I just want to say in front of the entire world now, thank you so much for everything that you've done for the department, but especially for me. For the first few months that I was here, you served as my interim chief of staff and just really helped me become a part of this agency and really helped us build a great team. And the work that you've led around innovation and deeper learning will have a legacy that will continue on into the future. I look forward to our daily text messages about all the ideas you think that we should be putting into place. But they're very meaningful to me, and I appreciate our friendship. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay.
Emily,
Yeah, I think it's good if you can sit back there. Yeah.
So we're gonna have
I
to
didn't
do, like,
miss.
everything come in closer.
Okay, let's see where we are.
Yes.
Wow.
Little people have to figure out how to
Diane
get
and
between
Tammy,
these
yeah, if you guys
places.
could
There you
switch.
go.
Pam, can you move this way just a touch? There we go. Now Diane's behind Dan.
Come this way.
There you go.
No, right behind.
Where
Diane.
you were, right where you were. Keep going, keep going. Yeah. There we go. Lauren. There we go. Thanks.
Ready? Good morning, everybody. This morning, it is my distinct honor and pleasure to recognize Beverly Rabel on her retirement from the Virginia Department of Education as Director of the Office of School Quality. Over the past 41 years, Bev has devoted her energies, capabilities, and wisdom to the improvement of public education. Bev, can you join me up here? Bev joined the department in 2012 as the coordinator of priority schools in the Office of School Improvement, where she later was promoted to serve as director of school quality. She has provided extraordinary leadership and worked, and I cannot stress this enough, tirelessly. She comes in sick to present to the board many times with teachers, principals, superintendents, and school divisions during the development of the Virginia Continuous Improvement process and offered training and support to all schools. And I want to talk to you a little bit about that a little more specifically. So my first introduction to Bev was really when we did the Franklin City division level review. And that, I think, was our first division level review. It is not an easy process when we are working with our school divisions because we're trying to help them improve, but it's not always positive from their perspective that we are there. And let me just say, she is so professional, but she's warm, she's gracious, she presents the kind of personality that is instructive. It's the teacher we all want, but she does it in this manner that helps them really understand where they should be going and how to accomplish it. And I saw it so specifically in that instance. And I know that skill is created by the heart that you have for public education, for the kids, and for how to work well with others. And I think that alone certainly helped us and helped them get to where they need to be. And so I so appreciate that. During her tenure at the department, she helped to develop a teacher and principal leaders in action initiative, add achievement gap, attendance, and student behavior components to the academic review toolkit, and developed a research-based division-level review tool. Bev has always been an advocate for students throughout her career, constantly reminding her colleagues that all decisions must be based on what is best for the children. And I think that underlying theme, we see it, we just saw it with Gina, is really a theme that I see with so many folks here at the department. We thank Bev for her devotion, candor, and the professional manner which she has served the board, the department, and public education, and extend our best wishes to her for her well-deserved retirement and time with her grandbabies. On behalf of the board, I would like to present you with this resolution of appreciation. We are so grateful for what you have done and just cannot even really express how much it has meant to the Commonwealth. Thank you.
Well, good morning, everyone. It feels very unusual to be standing here for this reason than my usual reason. But I first want to say thank you so much. I appreciate that. As you all know, it's never my favorite thing to be the person standing up doing the speaking, but I would like to thank you for the opportunity and the honor to serve children at this level in Virginia. That has been a wonderful end to my career, and to have the opportunity to have a voice that people listen to about putting children first, because as we know, one of our biggest challenges is to continue to think about all of our children and all of the many ways that we can think about meeting their needs and moving them forward. I'm particularly excited to think about the work around equity, because I think equity probably means something entirely different to many of us, but while all children are children, all children are not the same, and all children do not have the same needs. But I appreciate being a part of a group that is looking at how to do that. And I also appreciate the opportunity to work with classroom leaders all the way up to the leaders here at the board. So thank you very much.
Bev, I also wanted to take a second to thank you. Diane talked about your tireless work ethic, and the running joke, and even in the 2 weeks you've been gone, is that we think we're going to have to create 5 positions to replace you, and it's just, of course, we don't have 5 positions, so. But thank you so much. I will tell you, I've been, I'm visiting lots of schools around the state. I finally had the chance to go to Franklin just a couple of weeks ago on the first week of school. And the electricity in that school division is incredible. And when I asked them, how they got to this place, and there were a lot of reasons, but one of the things they said is they didn't think they could have gotten there without your support. And so it's not just one school division. That's one example of stories like that I hear all the time. You've led a great team. I'm looking forward to getting to know you in this new capacity, but I can't tell you that how much I thank you for your work. And when I think about what our role is as a state in helping school divisions make sure that every child has a great education, I learned so much from you in the year that I got to spend with you that I hope you'll continue to be a resource to us. Thank you so much.
Ms. Halton?
If I may just chime in, Dr. Lane's example from Franklin proves my point, which is you have helped us, Bev, in immense ways, really redo our whole approach to school improvement. And what we've tried to say as a board is we want to move from a punitive approach, a punitive relationship to struggling divisions, to a continuous quality improvement collaborative approach. But you have been the embodiment of that. And when you have a Franklin City come up and say, Bev Rabel helped us, rather than, oh my gosh, get these people out of my hair. They may have thought that occasionally too. But we hear that over and over and over again. So you have been both helped us get the structure right, but also have been the embodiment on a personal level to those struggling divisions of continuous quality improvement on behalf of children. Thank you.
Photo up.
I'm going to direct people again. Tammy, I need you on the other side of Ann.
Okay, yes.
I am. Pam, can you scoot just a little bit in? Tammy, just a little bit in. There we go. There we go. All right, thanks.
And the Tony Award goes to Madeline Michael. Today, it is my pleasure to recognize the recipient of the 2019 Tony Award for Excellence in Theater Education, Madeline Michael. Please come up. This award recognizes the top K-12 drama teacher in the United States for their efforts in championing the arts. Originally created by the Tony Awards and the Carnegie Mellon University, this honor also includes $10,000 for the school where Madeline works, which is Monticello's theater program. Madeline has led the drama program at her high school for more than a decade, including numerous community service endeavors and raising thousands of dollars each year for local charities and scholarships. Her curriculum emphasizes student playwriting, productions that engage a very diverse cast and crew, and continuing community service. Following the 2017 white supremacist rally in Charlottesville, Madeline and her students used theater to engage the school community and the community at large in conversations about racial inequality, including student-written productions, #WhileBlack, and A King's Story. A parent saw this and nominated Madeline for this award, which she was selected from a panel of judges who represented the American Theater Wing, the Broadway League, Carnegie Mellon University, and other leaders from the theater industry. So we're honored not only to have Madeline here with us today, but we're honored that she is serving our students and helping tell that story about equity and inequality based on current events that are happening right here in our community, but also having a national impact on our students across the country. Her commitment and her passion for teaching is a shining example of the difference that a teacher can make in the lives of students every day. And again, truly in this case, in our nation. I join the entire Board of Education in thanking you, Madeline, for your hard work and your devotion to our youth. I would also like to recognize Madeline's guests who are with her today. Her husband, John Michael, please stand. Her superintendent, Dr. Matthew Haas from Albemarle County Public Schools. Principal Rick Rehovec of Monticello High School, also please stand. Thank you for being here to recognize Madeline. Madeline, congratulations to you. I'd like to present you with this, a recognition. And in the spirit of a Tony Awards, I'd like you to give us an acceptance speech.
I know you're going to get this framed, Matt, right? Yeah. Okay. This award really, it's not about me. It's I'm really honored, but it's about my students who make me look so good. And honestly, I'm just the conduit. And I also have a supportive team here. I have a really good principal. I'm not just saying this, really I do. And the superintendent has been really brave. We've taken on some pretty important issues at Albemarle County. And that's what I wanted to say, that once again this fall, we have 2 students who have written plays, and I invite you all to come to them. They're November 7th and 8th, and they're one-act plays. One is written by a junior named Maria Bryce, who spent the summer working at interning at the UVA Woodson Center for African American Studies, and also at Monticello, like the Monticello, the TJ Monticello. And so she wrote something called Lost Cause, which is about the the mythology that surrounds the war between the states. And it's a very insightful look at Confederate imagery, which is an issue that our county has taken on. The other student her name is Shagun Gotra, and she's an Indian American student, and she's written a play that's partly in Punjabi, but you will be able to understand it by the way she's written it. And her play is really dedicated to our valuable and honored and cherished immigrant community in our school. So I would love you to come and see these. And that's pretty much what we're about. Students writing plays and expressing their thoughts and speaking for their community. Thank you very much.
Sure. All right, if Madeline's guests can come on up and get in the picture as well.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you. You're right. That's the best way.
I'm bossy. Okay, that'd be awesome.
Yes. Dan can't stand in front of me.
All right, we've got a group.
Just realizing that we've 2 men on the board.
Isn't that interesting? I hadn't even noticed that.
I guess it was that way before too, because we lost 2 women. Nothing's changed.
Step back just a little bit between the, yep, in the middle. There you go.
So like if anybody wants to come to this show.
Yes. Okay, one more. Good. All right. Thank you.
Okay, before we start on public comment, I do want to recognize that we are joined today by members of the Aspiring Special Education Leaders Academy, led by Mr. Doug Cox. They're here today to observe the meeting. We appreciate your being with us. Could you stand? I hope you're really here. Okay. Would you like to say a few words as always, Mr. Cox? Oh, I see you came prepared. Another shot.
Prepared because you surprised me 2 years
Yeah.
ago and left me speechless, so which is unusual. And I agree with Bev that it's a little different standing here in this capacity rather than presenting special education regs to you, which I've done many times over the years. But thank you for having us. This is our 12th cohort this year. We began this program in 2008. We started last month in August, and we will work together throughout this coming year for until next August. So it's actually a 13-month program. During this year, we'll talk a lot about leadership, and we'll talk a lot about those thorny issues that present challenges to special ed leaders. Believe it or not, they happen from time to time. It's really important for you to know that all of the folks that are in this cohort, as in the past, have all been nominated by their school division. They have been endorsed by the division superintendent. And typically we have over 50 applicants for 20 spaces. So it's a very competitive process. And this year's group has already demonstrated they have wonderful capacity for leadership and so much passion for the work that we do together. And the empirical data that we have collected over the last several years indicates that the program is doing what it's supposed to do, and that's to get the next generation of leaders up and running. And I'm very grateful to the board and to the Department of Ed for being so supportive, particularly now Dr. Hollins for standing in side by side with us. Dr. Lane spoke to our group yesterday, as well as Zach, and we have just so much camaraderie with you and the department, and I'm so very grateful for that. And thank you again for having us today.
Well, we're thankful for your being here, and also for all of you in the cohort. We as a board certainly appreciate the path you're traveling and understand your importance to the future of the Commonwealth. So thank you all very much for what you're doing.
The future of special ed is in good hands.
Okay, now we will get to public comment. Again, most of you have been here before, but we ask that you limit your remarks to 3 minutes. The board, as a matter of practice, does not respond to individual comments. However, members of staff do, where warranted, follow through with whatever issues are raised. So we will begin with Walissa Johnson. Oh, I'm sorry. Would you come on up, and we're happy to have you. And good morning.
Good morning.
No, it's all fine.
All right, so my topic is child sexual abuse. I would like to have a program instilled mandatory for parents to inform about child sexual abuse and just the different behaviors. I just want to start with some facts to kind of bring the tone of the situation and how important it is. Every 9 minutes, a child sexual abuse act is reported. 1 in 4 little girls, 1 in 20 little boys. Only 20% self-report, and only 15% of children have injuries consistent with sexual abuse. 45% of pregnant teens reported they experienced child sexual abuse, and 39% of girls between the ages of 7 and 12 have academic difficulties because of this. So it's really causing an issue with children being able to pay attention and focus in class, especially when they're really young. 93% of predators are known by the children, so it's normally a family or friend, somebody close to them, because it really is something that's started over time, just kind of groomed into the children. The physical behavioral signs of child sexual abuse is sexual behavior that is inappropriate for a child's age, bedwetting or soiling the bed, if a child has already outgrown those behaviors, not want to be alone with certain people or being afraid to be away from primary caregivers, tries to avoid removing clothing or to change or bathe. Emotional signs are excessive talk about knowledge of sexual topics, resuming behaviors they have outgrown, such as bedwetting, nightmares, a fear of being alone, excessive worry or fearfulness. Some of the signs that a person may be assaulting your child is they do not respect boundaries or listen to someone when they tell them no. They engage in touching that child, or child's parent or guardians have indicated the touching has been indicated as unwanted, tries to be a child's friend rather than filling an adult role in child's life, does not seem to have age-appropriate relationships, talks with children about their personal problems or relationships, spends time alone with children outside of the role in the child's life, and makes up excuses to be alone with the child, expresses unusual interest in child's sexual development, such as commenting on sexual characteristics or sexualizing normal behaviors, also gives a child's gifts without occasion or reason, and spends a lot of time with your child or another child you know. I just think the program will be very important to just inform parents about the signs and symptoms of it. You know, it's very, very prevalent. 1 in 4 little girls and 1 in 20 little boys. That's extremely high. If it was any other health epidemic, they would be on it. If it was cancer, if it was diabetes, if it was heart disease, if it was anything else. I just think it's important just to inform and just make it mandatory for parents to really get that message out there. It's very, very important. A lot of parents may not know what it looks like, and a lot of children may not know what's going on with them. So it's important to inform the parents so they can figure out what's going on with their children and really talk to them and have a conversation about it.
Thank you very much for being here today.
All right, thank you.
Ben Kaiser.
Okay, good morning, President Gecker, members of the board, Dr. Lane. My name is Ben Kaiser. I'm the Executive Director of the Virginia Association of School Superintendents. First, I would also like to congratulate all of those you've recognized this morning for their years of service and dedication to children. Much appreciation. I am speaking today, though, as the chair of the Virginia Public Education Coalition, a coalition of 12 education associations, all of which are listed at the top of my printed statements. The coalition was formed several years ago and meets monthly to discuss issues relevant to public education, to coordinate advocacy efforts with the General Assembly on behalf of public education, and to sometimes produce documents with specific recommendations for policymakers to consider. I am proud to share our latest product with you today that's being passed around at the moment. And we reference this as strategies to address Virginia's teacher shortage, along with some of my colleagues who will also follow my comments this morning. Even with some progress made in recent years to address the teacher shortage, we do not want policymakers to think that this work is done. As you will see in the document, the coalition's work led to recommendations in 3 key areas: attraction, induction, and retention. Within each of these 3 areas, recommendations are grouped under the headings of compensation, preparation and support, and working conditions. Regarding the area of induction, I will share a few of the recommendations. We believe that the Virginia Teaching Scholarship Loan Program should be expanded along with supports to ensure teachers fulfill the service requirements. We believe that teacher preparation programs should reflect the skill requirements within the profile of a Virginia graduate and the needs of modern learners. We believe that mentoring and coaching should reflect evidence-based practices and be available for teachers and administrators. We also believe that incentives should be available to school divisions to encourage professional development that is job embedded and that provides peer-to-peer support throughout the school year. Many of your proposed changes to the standards of quality support the Virginia Public Education Coalition's recommendations in the area of induction. In closing, 2 other members of VPEC, as we reference, will share recommendations in the areas of attraction and retention. We appreciate all that the Virginia Board of Education has done and will continue to do to address the teacher shortage crisis in Virginia. There is much work yet to do. A continued focus on the part of the governor, the General Assembly, and the Board of Education to develop plans that turn these recommendations into reality will ameliorate the teacher shortage crisis over time and ensure that all children in Virginia have the benefit of highly qualified teachers. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Livingston.
Good morning, President Gecker, members of the board, Dr. Lane. I'm Jim Livingston, president of the Virginia Education Association, and I would like to add my congratulations to our newest board members. The VEA fully supports all of the VPEC strategies to address the teacher shortage, but I want to take a moment to speak specifically to the recommendations on teacher attraction. You already know that since 2009, there has been a 40% decrease in the number of students entering Virginia's teacher education programs. Equally concerning is the rate at which teachers are leaving the profession. If we're unable to fill the growing hole of teacher talent, we can have little confidence in maintaining a high-quality public education system. To improve induction and retention, VPEC sees 3 areas where we must focus our efforts: compensation, preparation and support, and working conditions. Virginia ranks 32nd in the country in average teacher salary, more than $8,000 behind the national average. Clearly, we need to pay teachers more. And while we must start with improving compensation, we also have opportunities to address the increasing student debt crisis through student loan reform. Teacher candidates are paying full-time tuition, thereby taking on more debt, while also fully immersed in the classroom for 40 or more hours a week during their student teaching practicum. We must look at paid clinical hours and housing supports for teacher candidates. Our teacher education programs must be designed to prepare new educators to work with the increasing challenges our students face. The board can support efforts to ensure that the competencies included in the profiles of a leader and the profiles of an educator are reflected in these programs. We should also consider options for accreditation of our preparation programs so they have more ability to respond to the needs and trends of the teacher pipeline. As you all know, the VEA has long advocated for improved working conditions for all school employees. Research indicates that upwards of 2/3 of teachers who leave the profession before retirement do so because of working conditions. We're grateful that the VPEC included the need to improve working conditions in its recommendations. We're also grateful that some of the revisions to the SOQs you're considering address some of our recommendations. Teacher leader positions and recommendations for improved mentoring before you address before you to address some of the policy considerations the VPAC has included in our work. And we also believe that a common application and statewide clearinghouse is another simple fix that this board could put in place. My statement today is not a full recount of the VPAC recommendations in teacher attraction, so I encourage the board to review our positions and engage us in the good work I know you are committed to doing for all of Virginia's public schools. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Jim Baldwin.
Good morning, President Gecker, members of the board, and Dr. Lane. I'm Jim Baldwin. I'm the Executive Director for the Virginia Association of Elementary School Principals, which is a founding member of VPEC. At the end of September, as schools exited a very busy opening of another school year, conversations with principals across the Commonwealth revealed that many schools at every level opened their doors to children without teachers to meet them in the classrooms. This is not new. This is our norm. We can do more to improve attracting teachers and improving teacher induction programs. However, critical to allowing time for these programs to unfold is developing policies and guidelines that improve teacher retention. The Virginia Public Education Coalition has grouped the recommendations for improving teacher retention under the areas of compensation, preparation and support, and finally, working conditions. The recommendations that I'm offering you are framed through the lens of how best to improve teacher retention. Within the area of compensation, we must look at mid-career teachers leaving the profession. Salary structures should reflect the value we place on the experience and expertise of our teachers who have invested time and energy into the success of our children. Standard pay tables and step increases may no longer be adequate to retain our best. Additionally, it is imperative to provide mid-career teachers with opportunities and possibly additional compensation to grow in their skill sets and exercise leadership without leaving the classroom. Preparation and support encompasses improving and updating evaluation models that de-emphasize reliance on standardized testing and instead recognize growth and competency-based performance. Quality professional development is critical to retaining our mid-career teachers and must be evidence-based, individualized, and flexible with outcomes that measured in growth and competency. In developing these ideas, what better way to demonstrate support for mid-career professionals than to capture the voice of the practitioners through the teacher advisory boards to the General Assembly, the Secretary of Education, and even to the Board of Education when discussing and developing legislation and policy on education. While salaries and support are essential to improving our track record on mid-career retention, time and again, teachers report that working conditions within their building are the primary reason for moving on or leaving. Everything addressed so far has an impact on the working conditions, and changes there will make improvements on the environment within a school. Less emphasis on standardized test scores will allow autonomy in the development of best classroom instructional practices, allowing administrators to focus their observation time on new teachers and utilize mid-career demonstrated experts to help coach and guide new teachers in the growth of best practice in the classroom. Encouraging teachers' engagement with professional associations and the professional development networking through personal contact and social media that this type of networking can provide them. This will entice teachers to take ownership of their own growth and engage them in continuous improvement in our schools. Thank you.
Thank you. David Elena.
Good morning, Mr. President, Superintendent Lane, and members of the board. My name is David Elena, and I'm the proud principal of Tomahawk Creek Middle School in Chesterfield County. I am a past president of the Virginia Association of Secondary School Principals, and I currently serve on the board of the directors for the Virginia Foundation for Educational Leadership, who I represent today. As you know, VASSP is a founding member of the Virginia Public School Education Coalition. I'm in my 35th year of public education and my 20th year of school administration. I've listened intently to my colleagues as they have made the case for attracting, inducting, and retaining teachers in the face of a statewide shortage that is reaching a critical level. And I agree with all that they have stated to you this morning. I would like to add my thoughts from a practitioner's standpoint to the day's discussion. When we discuss compensation for teachers, we have to ask ourselves, is teaching our children a priority for our state? If the answer is yes, which I believe it is, then we must ensure that our teachers are well compensated. Attracting the highest quality individuals to our profession is the starting point, but we especially need to focus on the compensation of those teachers who have multiple years of experience in education. Keeping those teachers in the profession will create a pool of experts that can coach and mentor younger teachers, which will in turn help us retain those new teachers. Having veteran teachers as mentors to new teachers is a two-way street. Experienced teachers will learn new instructional strategies from the new teachers that they mentor, as well as provide those new teachers with guidance as they develop their skills. This collaboration will result in positive collegial relationships that benefit the new teacher and the veteran teacher. These relationships will lead to a better working environment with more support for new teachers and better instruction for all students. Administrators also play a key role in attracting, inducting, and retaining high-quality teacher candidates. A great administrator can be another source of support and guidance for new teachers. However, in order for this to occur, the staffing standards for assistant principals must be revised, and VASSP strongly supports the board's proposal to revise the SOQ to increase the student to AP ratio to 400-to-1. As a school administrator, I can tell you that time is our most valuable asset. Providing quality coaching and mentoring to new teachers is critical to their success. Providing the proper staffing in the SOQs would allow assistant principals more time to observe new teachers and provide valuable guidance and support to them. Providing teachers with the opportunity to mentor new teachers is also a valuable opportunity to support these educators. Reducing a teacher's class load and providing additional compensation to assume a leadership role in the school without having to go the administration route would benefit new teachers, veteran teachers, and ultimately improve instruction and student learning. Finally, we need to continue to reduce the emphasis on SOL tests as a means of accountability. Continuing to do so will provide all teachers the flexibility to design deep, meaningful learning opportunities that promote the skills employers are looking for, namely the 5 C's that are such an integral part of the profile of a Virginia graduate. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak before you today, and I want to let all of you know that you are always welcome to come by Tomahawk Creek Middle School and visit us anytime. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Jill Shum.
Good morning, all. My name is Jill Shum, and I currently reside in Alexandria. After working for 26 years in Title I schools, I recently retired and started my own business as an educational consultant. For the last 8 years, I served as an elementary school principal and have led accredited with condition schools, both in Alexandria City Public Schools and most recently in Albemarle County Public Schools. So it was great to see my former boss there just a second ago. My concern is about the lack of core, state-approved instructional materials and money specifically earmarked for these materials. The biggest academic challenge I faced was that my schools and districts lacked primary instructional materials in the 4 major content areas aligned to current standards of Virginia learning. Many school districts moved away from adopting core instructional textbooks and opted for a hodgepodge of supplemental materials that often lacked cohesion or accompanied teacher planning materials. Although VDOE publishes lists of approved instructional materials as required by state law, local school boards are not required to purchase materials from this list, so many don't. In the last several years, I frequently sat in grade level planning meetings where teachers would express their frustrations with not being able to plan as a team because they were forced to share limited and aging instructional materials. This problem led many teachers into planning as independent practitioners rather than as a team who could utilize the same resources. The result was that some turned to teachers, paid teachers, or delivered instruction that lacked cohesion. The VDOE website does have some sample lessons, but not enough for at-risk students to achieve mastery. Our state results on SOL tests indicate the need for a change. Third grade students who read at grade level, as well as the number of students scoring advanced or proficient in English and science, are significantly declining. In 2016-17, 59% of Virginia school divisions had one or more schools not fully accredited. I applaud your efforts with the standards of quality proposals and think your considerations are appropriate. However, I would ask that you also consider adding a specific requirement for instructional material support for schools with accreditation concerns. Rigorous, high-quality instructional materials that are aligned to the current SOL for first best instruction are key to success for at-risk schools. In the latest Southern Region Board review of VDOE, it was recommended that VDOE state leaders consider the following recommendations to continue to develop support for local efforts to design and deliver high-quality instruction on the SOL. In addition, their findings indicated that Virginia provided minimal support in using data to continuously improve state practices around local curriculum alignment practices. I would respectfully like to offer my services to VDOE as an education consultant for curriculum support and mentoring staff of at-risk schools. I welcome the chance to assist the state, which I love very dearly, as well as our kids. Please feel free to contact me, and I thank you for your time and consideration today.
Thank you. Rachel Dean.
Hi, good morning, President Gecker, Dr. Lane, members of the board. My name is Rachel Dean. I'm an attorney with the Legal Aid Justice Center here in Richmond, where I direct the Just Children program. We want to thank the board for all of the work that's been done on the draft standards of quality, and I want to thank the staff as well for all of their work, particularly on the equity fund, as we heard discussion in committee yesterday. The word bold has been used to describe this set of standards of quality, and I think that was the aim that President Gecker set out at the beginning of this process. And we believe that these recommendations are bold and that they're ambitious and that they're absolutely necessary for improving educational equity across the Commonwealth so that a child's zip code or poverty level doesn't predict their educational achievement. This board has a constitutional duty under our state constitution to set standards for high quality public education, regardless of the cost. And we urge the board to move forward with this strong set of recommendations. We appreciate the board's commitment to equity and thoughtful consideration of comments and feedback throughout this process. And we want to thank VDOA staff as well for that. We, in particular, want to express strong support for three portions of the draft SOQs in front of you: the equity fund, the school counselor ratios, and the elimination of the support position cap. The equity fund is a significant step by this board toward ensuring that economically disadvantaged students have the additional resources they need to succeed. As we've noted in our prior comments and letters to the board, the expanded add-on range in this fund brings the Commonwealth more in line with other states for spending on education for vulnerable students. And we support moving these mechanisms into the SOQ. We also support the flexibility provisions as well. Second, we support the board's recommendations around counselor ratios, one counselor for every 250 students across the board. We believe that this nationally recommended ratio is important for education equity as well. We know that counselors are vital for academic achievement, but they're also just vital for the entire school community. They're important to meeting the needs of students in poverty and to improving school climate in our schools as well. Finally, we urge the board to reaffirm its 2016 recommendation to eliminate the support position cap. wholesale. As the Commonwealth Institute has detailed in reports and as we've detailed in letters to you, support personnel are vital to keeping our children safe, to keeping our schools running. They make our schools work. As the parent of a kindergartner in RPS, I now really understand that. They make our schools work. And the effects of this cap are felt most strongly in the school divisions that serve high numbers of economically disadvantaged students. So recommending elimination of the support position cap has an equity effect as well. We want to thank you again for all the work that you're doing for children in the Commonwealth and your commitment to equity. Thanks.
Thank you. Chris Duncan.
Good morning, President Gecker, Dr. Lane, members of the board. My name is Chris Duncombe. I'm the policy director with the Commonwealth Institute. We're a research and advocacy nonprofit located here in Richmond. I would want to start by saying that TCI is highly supportive of the proposed SOQ revisions, and I'm thankful to the members of the board and the staff for the time and energy for such a thorough review of the education formula. And for putting forward ambitious, critically important revisions to the state's SOQ standards. The proposals being considered offer a comprehensive vision for how school funding can look here in Virginia by addressing key shortcomings in our current staffing and by improving the equity of our school funding system. A few highlights from the SOQ revisions that I'd like to point out. The board's proposal to eliminate the state's cap on support staff positions that would lift a decade-long shadow over Virginia schools cast by the Great Recession, and then help ensure teachers and students have the support they need for successful learning environments. While never approved in the SOQ standards in the Code of Virginia, the support cap has been included in every budget since its introduction in 2010. It is a budgetary tool to reduce state funding that does not reflect the actual staffing needs of schools and forces locals to either find the resources to fund these positions or to eliminate them. The cap has also had a disproportionate impact in terms of staffing on school divisions with the most students of color. Support staffing has dropped by 4 positions per 1,000 students in divisions with the highest percentage of students of color, compared to a decrease of 1 position per 1,000 students in divisions with the lowest percentage. Ending the support cap is a vital step to repairing the foundation of the SOQ. The board is also taking bold steps to move the state funding formula forward. The proposed equity fund begins to modernize our education funding formula by recognizing that each student is not the same. Their needs, services, and costs vary. To quote from authors from Rutgers University and the Education Law Center in their report, The Real Shame of the Nation, providing equal educational opportunity requires that each child has the opportunity to gain access to a given set of outcomes. It requires a recognition that achieving those outcomes varies in cost from child to child, location to location, and setting to setting for a variety of reasons. Virginia's SOQ did not factor in one of those most important reasons, student socioeconomic status, something that 24 other states successfully do. The proposed equity fund will make that a reality here in Virginia. The current proposal for the equity fund also strikes an important balance between flexibility and accountability, recognizing that students from low-income families have a diversity of needs that extend beyond instructional assistance in a classroom, and that schools may not be able to fill vacant positions without offering compensation adjustments. This proposal allows schools to allocate funds based on what makes the most sense for their particular circumstances. Yet it also requires divisions to report on the distribution and use of funds to ensure that funding is actually distributed to schools with the highest level of need. I thank you for your time and leadership in these SOQ recommendations, and we are fully supportive. Thank you.
Thank you. Kelly Harris Braxton.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Mr. President, members of the board, and Dr. Lane. My name is Kelly Harris Braxton, and I'm here today on behalf of Virginia First Cities. Virginia First Cities is an advocacy coalition of 16 of Virginia's historic core cities. Our member cities coalesce around areas of concern, of shared concern, with a special emphasis on public policy for challenged public schools pre-K through 12. The members of VFC face unique and challenging demographics that many other Virginia localities do not. One of the defining characteristics of Virginia First City school divisions is that we have high concentrations of school children in poverty. It is through the lens of equity and reconciliation that we approach and comment today on the draft Board of Education Standards of Quality proposals. We applaud you on your bold efforts to address the concerns of our children in your proposals and outreach. In short, we are pleased to read the latest proposals and are supportive as it helps to restore statewide school funding to help schools meet the unique needs of low-income children. Additionally, we thank you for taking our prior comments into account in this latest draft. We are supportive of the Board of Education's draft in total, including but not limited to eliminating the support cap, which is not there, to greater funding for counselors, teachers, reading specialists, mentoring, and other important concerns. Specifically, we are most supportive of the proposal that consolidates the at-risk add-on and the SOQ prevention, intervention, and remediation funds into a single expanded equity fund. We support the inclusion of the equity fund in the SOQ and are pleased that you recommend increasing funding by $131 million. For years, Virginia First Cities has successfully advocated for incremental increases to the at-risk add-on program because of its major impact on our communities. The at-risk add-on is certainly one of the most helpful state aid programs that our member school divisions receive. Virginia's support for students from families that struggle economically lags behind many other states and behind what we know is needed to provide these students with the same opportunities to be more successful in the classroom like their financially more secure peers. With research showing it can cost significantly more to help low-income students reach similar levels of performance as students from wealthier families, more money is needed for low-income students because they require additional services and support. Quality early education, early childhood learning provides basic skills essential for children entering kindergarten. Funding for additional instruction and remediation for struggling students is needed to reduce the achievement gap. Including the at-risk add-on and the SOQ portends predictability in funding, which is very helpful for our members. The Board of Education's latest draft directly responds to our members' concerns for flexibility to address programming and issues unique to their school divisions. In addition, funding to attract, retain, train, and support teachers in challenged schools will enhance the learning experience for children and teachers alike. Thank you for allowing us this time to express that Virginia First Cities is fully supportive of the draft Board of Education's SOQ proposals. Thank you.
Thank you. Melinda Bright.
Good morning, President Gecker, Vice President Atkinson, Dr. Lane, members of the board. I'm Melinda Bright, and I'm the Teaching and Learning Specialist at the Virginia Education Association. And I'm excited to share some information with you this morning about a conference that we have coming up. I'm passing around some flyers that will give you more information about that. This is the 2019 VEA Instruction and Professional Development Conference. It's going to be held at the Richmond Marriott downtown on October 11th and 12th. This conference is an opportunity to members and non-members across the state to come together as we strive to provide optimal learning conditions for all public school students of the Commonwealth. The focus of the conference this year is connecting with students through trauma-responsive practices. Adverse childhood experiences, often referred to as ACEs, and the unsettling impact these experiences have on brain functioning and learning, as well as other effects of toxic stress, are important to understand as potential driving factors behind student behaviors in our schools. So I think everybody has the two flyers. One of them promotes an event that is going to be a community forum, and that one is focusing on Richmond and the Richmond metro area. It's going to be held at Hermitage High School on Thursday evening, October 10th. Dr. Lori Desatel is our keynote speaker for the conference, and she's going to speak at the community forum, and we're going to have a resource fair. We're promoting this to educators, to families, to anyone in the community to come and hear Dr. Lori Desautels, and also to be made aware of some resources that are available in the community. Excuse me. The other flyer delineates the conference itself, which is on October 11th and 12th, and it lists some of the workshop topics that are going to be part of that conference. And again, Dr. Desautels, an expert in the field of trauma and resiliency, is going to be our keynote speaker. Breakout sessions will offer strategies to build relationships with students and create space that conveys safety, acceptance, and opportunities for our students to experience success. According to the Voices for Virginia's Children, 20% of Virginia's children have experienced 2 or more ACEs before the age of 18. Also, today we've heard statistics about child sexual abuse and about poverty. Those are just 2 of the adverse childhood experiences that our students may be exposed to. The VEA believes by confronting these findings with empathy, with relationships, and strategies for resilience, we will change the future trajectory for many students that enter our classrooms with a history of trauma. Together, we think we can make a difference. Professionals who work with children who have experienced ACEs also report burnout related to job stress. Excuse me. This convening of educators dedicated to providing support to students with social, emotional, and behavioral needs is just the beginning of VEA's effort to confront the impact of trauma on children and on educators. I offer an invitation to each of you and to the VDOE staff to attend this conference to gain information about the impact of adverse childhood experiences, strategies that promote resiliency, and collaborative opportunities to prevent ACEs. Thank you for your time and all that you do. I hope that some of you will be able to come to the conference. It will give you an opportunity to engage with educators from across the state, and I hope to see you there. Thank you.
Thank you. That actually concludes the list of people who signed up in advance. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to address the board during the public comment period today? I don't see anybody moving, so we will close public comment. All right, move on to the consent agenda. We will pull item A at the request of Dr. Duran. Items B through G, those 6 items, is there a request to either pull one for discussion or to approve the consent agenda as, modified?
Motion to approve as amended.
Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Item A, Dr. Duran.
La Junta de Educación de Virginia se une a la observación de la Mes Nacional de Herencia España del 15 de septiembre al 15 de octubre para celebrar las conversaciones y la cultura y el patrimonio de hispanos y latinos nativos y inmigrantes de Virginia. La Junta de Educación reconoce que hay más de 200,000 jóvenes hispanos y latinos asisten a las escuelas públicas de Virginia. It's my pleasure and honor to read and recognize Hispanic Heritage Month, and I want to read our resolution for that. Whereas the Virginia Board of Education joins Americans and Virginians in observing National Hispanic Heritage Month, which is September 15th to October 15th, to celebrate and honor the contributions, culture, and heritage of both native-born and immigrant Hispanics and Latinos in Virginia. And whereas the Virginia Board of Education recognizes that over 200,000 Hispanic and Latino youth attend our Virginia public schools in the Commonwealth, and is therefore committed to supporting the aspirations of these students on their journey to achieve academic success and build connections with others as responsible and responsive citizens. And whereas the Virginia Board of Education recognizes that the cultural fabric of Virginia is very diverse, and it is important to appreciate the complexities of Hispanic and Latino history and celebrate the achievements in culture as one of the Commonwealth's greatest strengths. We have many famous Virginians that I like to recognize that are recognized in the resolution. Fernando Bolivar, who was nephew and later adopted son of South American hero Simon Bolivar. He attended the University of Virginia as its second international student and is recognized by the university as an early exemplar of the strong and historic ties between the university, Virginia, and Latin America. Sylvia Mendez, 9-year-old plaintiff in the Mendez versus Westminster 1947 case that was involving whites-only public school in California, resulting in a decision from the 9th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals making school segregation illegal and inspiring Thurgood Marshall to use the decision as a precedent when he argued Brown versus Board of Education in 1954. And most recently, we have election of Elizabeth Guzman, Halahala, first two Hispanic women elected to the Virginia House of Delegates, where they've joined Alfonso Lopez and Delegate Jason Miares to have a record number of Hispanic representatives in the Virginia Assembly. And whereas the Virginia Board of Education recognizes that the contributions of Hispanic and Latino Virginians through leadership, military service, education, healthcare, business, science and technology, arts, entertainment are critical to building a stronger and more sustainable Commonwealth for all of our citizens and for future generations. Now there be it resolved that the Virginia Board of Education recognizes September 15th to October 15th, 2019 as Hispanic Heritage Month and encourages all Virginia schools to recognize the achievement and contributions of Hispanics this month and throughout the year. And Mr. President and members of the board and public, it's an honor to introduce this resolution. In the 1960s, Hispanic Heritage was a day that was later turned into Hispanic Heritage Month, and it's an opportunity for us to recognize and that we have a very diverse Commonwealth, that all of us contribute to the fabric of making this a great Commonwealth and nation. And it's an important time for us to pause and celebrate the history and the rich history of our population. And also to note that our Hispanic population and our students are one of the fastest growing in our Commonwealth. And as we address our SOQs and the Equity Fund, and many of the speakers referenced this earlier today, it's important that we consider that the face of Virginia in the future is looking differently, and we need to respond to meet those needs. And our board is doing that, and I'm very proud and honored to be a member of this board and proud that we are all about to honor this and recognize Hispanic Heritage Month. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Dr. Duran. You could add to the list of significant people, Salvatore Romero, who served on this board before you, and of course, Dr. Francisco Duran, who has had a distinguished career in this, every day helping people in this Commonwealth. So thank you. The resolution's been introduced. Dr. Duran, I'll take that as a motion to adopt it.
So moved.
Second. Thank you, Dr. Wilson. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Good. That one was easier than I thought it might be. I will say, when you started off, you were past my ability from Duolingo, but I'm working on it, and I'm getting there slowly. I think I'm on my 56th day in my streak, so one day.
And imagine all of our ELL students who have to have that in their experience
Exactly.
every day, and why we need
Every
these
day.
supports for them.
Okay, we will move on to item H, second review of proposed revisions to the standards of quality. Thank you.
Good morning, President Gecker, members of the board, Dr. Lane.
You will do me one favor, Zach. I've
Sir.
heard a couple speakers today refer to these standards of quality as bold, which is not a good political word for us to be using. If you could refer to them instead as the common sense standards of quality proposals, I would
My
appreciate
notes,
it greatly.
The bold is nowhere in these notes. So.
Thank you.
So I'm just going to be brief. And remind you, we began this journey in November of 2018. Starting your biennial review of the SOQ to fulfill your constitutional duty to prescribe the standards of quality, subject only to revision by the General Assembly. We had our retreat in April, where we went in depth into these new recommendations, and they've evolved over several work sessions since. We've also engaged with several opportunities for stakeholders to provide input across the state through a series of public hearings that we've held. On the screen is a summary of the proposals that we reviewed yesterday. The two highlighted in yellow are the two proposals that we went in depth on as they evolved from a prior meeting. First, the Equity Fund. This proposal would provide positions and resources focused to our schools with the highest concentration of poverty. And those funds would be school divisions will be required to use those funds to provide either additional instructional positions, student support positions, targeted compensation adjustments to attract and retain experienced teachers in high poverty schools, as well as a provision that would allow those funds to be used flexibly for at-risk or remediation programs for up to 70% of those funds. The class size reduction proposal, as you see, it has an estimated fiscal impact of 0. This proposal would move the current K-3 class size incentive program to reduce class sizes in high poverty schools into the SOQ, and it would build in a additional provision to provide flexibility for school divisions to use those funds to provide targeted compensation adjustments for teachers to teach in high poverty schools in lieu of reducing class sizes. So the trade-off being either hire experienced teachers with additional compensation or provide reduced class sizes for teachers with less experience. The other proposals, not much changed in recent months. Teacher, leader, and mentor programs. That proposal originally would have provided first and second year teachers with mentors. Some of the discussion yesterday signaled interest into moving our proposal into providing mentors for their first 3 years. English learner teachers, that proposal would provide differentiated staffing levels based upon English proficiency. Reading specialists or specialized student support personnel would provide positions at a ratio of 4 positions per 1,000 students that could be filled through a variety of positions such as school nurses, psychologists, and social workers. Reading specialists that would distribute reading specialist positions to grades K through 5 based upon reading score outcomes on SOL assessments. And work-based learning coordinators and principal mentorship programs, which would establish work units at the department to provide regional coordination of work-based learning programs as well as principal mentorship programs. And the other recommendations are reaffirmations of your 2016 recommendations around school counselors, assistant principals, addressing the recession era support cap and the flexibility provisions that were offered to school divisions, as well as a recommendation to improve the data collections at the department to better reflect what prevailing practices are so we can inform our SOQ review process in the future. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions? I know we spent a fair amount of time on this yesterday in the SOQ committee. We're getting to the point where if we're going to make additional changes, now is the time. The plan still is to move forward in October. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But Diane?
So yesterday, I brought up a concern that I had about the possibility on a theoretical basis that these additional dollars could be put into a school system, but might not result in new positions. And so, and for me, the concern exists, especially in our schools where we really feel like that needs to happen. So Ms. Halton very cleverly reminded me about the provision that deals with withholding of at-risk funds for those schools under division or corrective action plans if they're not implementing the plans. And so I would like us to think about, first of all, that language is not in the SOQ. It could be in the SOQ in the provision that relates to compliance, but it currently sits in the Appropriations Act.
but maybe look at that language, see whether, and I'm not sure I'm up for withholding the funds because I'm not sure that that helps, but can we look at how we could be more directive in the use of those funds in those instances? And you may decide that it's not going to work, but I'd like us to really at least explore that. I don't know what other board members feel about that, but I'm putting that forward as a suggestion.
Ms. Alton.
If I may, yes, I'd like to chime in. When we made some changes a few years back, the General Assembly made changes to provide for the ability of this board to withhold funds to divisions that were not participating, not availing themselves in a collaborative spirit with our school improvement process. Those who had been identified, those few divisions that had been identified as needing intensive review and supervision through that process. And the General Assembly gave this board the authority to withhold funds withhold at-risk add-on funds under certain circumstances. Thankfully, we've never come close. Nobody's ever recommended that we needed to exercise that authority, and I hope we never do. But recognizing that we are, but I do think that that it helps get everybody's attention. And the collaborative work with Bev Rabel that I cited earlier has been tremendous, and that's not only been on the part of the department, but it's been on the part of those divisions that have been singled out for that most intensive level of partnership with the department. I'm sure that they have partnered with the department well for all kinds of reasons, mainly because they don't want to do well by students. But I do think that potential of having the at-risk add-on funds withheld is not insignificant if you were to have a division that wasn't ready to avail themselves of those opportunities. So my worry here, and that Ms. Atkinson and I were discussing between ourselves yesterday, is that if the at-risk add-on funds essentially get moved into SOQs, what happens to that? And so, Zach, I'd like to ask you all to look at adding, regardless of whatever happens to that statutory language, that separate statutory language, that we add to the SOQs. And I think the right place to add it is under section, I'm looking at the proposal before us, the September 18th version, September 18th version, page 5. So this would be under E3, where we provide flexibility for the deployment of these funds. I don't think it's appropriate under the SOQs for anybody to be withholding funds. The SOQs are mandating the expenditure of funds by the state and the localities. But rather, when we think about the flexibility in the deployment of these funds, that we may perhaps could add some language that school divisions under division level review would be expected to submit their plans for use of this fund for review as part of their corrective action plan. And the current process essentially sets up a dialogue between the local division and the DOE folks over the best deployment of those of the at-risk add-on funds, and I would submit that would be an appropriate use of these funds, just to set up a dialogue. So I would ask you to see if you can come up with some proposed language for our consideration, if I may, Mr. President, and Dr. Lane, ask Zach to come up with some language that we could at least consider. And I don't, if subject obviously to the interest of the board, but I also wanted to make sure and put all that out here today because I wanted the groups, so many groups we heard from today, which were have given us so many insightful recommendations to help us get to this point on these great recommendations. Recognizing this would be a substantive change, we'd appreciate your feedback and help us get it right.
Go ahead, Dr. Wilson.
I understand Ms. Atkinson's concern. I'm a little concerned myself about putting, removing some of the flexibility that we are seeking to provide through the equity fund, and knowing that it is a possibility, but not a foregone conclusion, that divisions will not add additional positions, leaving that room for local divisions to make the determination what their needs are. They are closer or closest to their needs, and we trust that we have the supports and whatnot in place. I do appreciate Ms. Holton's suggestion for those divisions which are under particular review by the department. That feels like a consistent kind of approach, but I'm a little hesitant to include language that removes flexibility for other divisions that might need that. And even with those schools that are under particular review, this idea of collaboration in making the determination, what should those strategies or tactics be? I would want us to somehow find our space, or the right place within that flexibility space for our divisions.
My intent was actually not to expand it to the whole universe, but was really consistent with where it is currently, in that it would be for those divisions and schools that are currently under MOUs and corrective action.
So the same
let me
predicate as in the budget language, which is that the Board of Education has required a local school board to submit a corrective action plan pursuant to, et cetera. It's for those, then, that's fine.
Mr. President?
Please.
So I think I'm right that we are engaged in that level of review with only a very small handful of divisions at this point, and I'm sure Dr. Lane could tell me that may change after today. I'm not sure. There may be a couple more, but the suggestion would not be that anybody dictate to those divisions even how to spend their equity funds, but rather that they report to the state, as they are required to do on other factors, as part of their corrective action plan, how they plan to spend those sums, and then there is an opportunity for dialogue between them and the state as needed. I think that process has been working well and would continue to work well. And even for those divisions, we don't want to take their flexibility away, but we just want to have some degree of effective guidance.
We can work on some language to ensure that it's collaboratively developed, a plan for spending those flexible funds.
Yeah, and I think if you look at what we already do with the corrective action plan is submitted, and if it doesn't meet requirements, then the state sends it back, and the divisions are always responsible for their own corrective action plans in that current process. There's just a provision for some back and forth as needed. I would think that would be a good model.
Okay, is there any dissension from that concept? I'm not saying the precise words yet, but the concept. Okay, and we can figure out something in the next month. All right, anything else on the SOQs? Yeah, Dr. Duran.
Just to confirm, so from yesterday, our discussion on the third year for teacher, leader, and mentor, that will be changed. Can you tell me where that will be added, and is it going to be consistent with what we have for first and second year, every one position for every 15, or are you still working that?
We're still working through that. We do plan on bringing something back next month that would include the third year teachers.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else on this? No? Okay. Yesterday we talked about having a discussion about the difference between making recommendations and actually issuing in accordance with the constitutional authority. I'd like to put that off. I've asked our AG to take a look at that, and I think we'll be able to do a more full presentation of those options at the next meeting. If anybody wants to discuss it today, we can certainly discuss it in the broadest terms, but I'd like to get a complete feel from the AG's office as to, what they think the process looks like if we go down the constitutional path of issuing SOQs versus the current statutory path of making recommendations to the Assembly. But again, I'm happy to discuss that now if anybody has a desire to do it now.
Only a question: that your anticipation is that we would get legal advice or clarification and then still anticipating making a decision on that next month in October.
It is my anticipation and hope we will make a decision in October. I mean, again, we've talked about the constitutional piece before, Article 8, Section 2, standards of quality for the several school divisions shall be determined and prescribed from time to time by the Board of Education, subject to revision only by the General Assembly. The history of this is this board did that, for about 3 years, 71 through 74, I guess it's 4 years. And then the SOQs were codified and we began making recommendations as opposed to issuing. What the impact of issuing is, when they would take effect, for example, it's clear that you need to give the General Assembly an opportunity to revise. Right? They don't become effective day one. And just want to work through some of the technical issues that would surround an actual issuance with the AG's office before, we go down that path.
So just for my understanding, your anticipation is we'll learn more when
Yes.
we meet and make a decision next month. So
that is my hope.
potentially make a decision next month. So to the extent the public has input or wisdom for us on that approach, we would invite that between now and next month.
Absolutely. Thank you. That's what I meant to say, and I appreciate your saying it for me. Okay. That it on SOQs for right now? I mean, I will say thanks to everybody here and to the staff again. This has been a fairly long and exhaustive journey with a lot of public input, as mentioned before, and a lot of time spent by members of this board. And I don't know how much time spent by staff on this, but it's a lot, not a little. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, item I, first review of proposed revisions to the regulations governing the testing of sight and hearing of pupils. Good morning.
Good morning, President Gecker, Vice President Atkinson, members of the board, and Dr. Lane. I'm Sam Hollins. I'm the Assistant Superintendent for Special Education and Student Services. I'm with you today for your first review of the proposed revisions to regulations governing the testing of sight and hearing of pupils. That's fast-tracked. The purpose of this fast-track regulatory action is to address legislation that was approved by the General Assembly during the 2017 session. You'll see in your attachment that the proposed revisions align the regulations to the Code of Virginia and offer an opportunity for the Virginia Department of Education to incorporate feedback that we received from the stakeholders to align the hearing screening schedule to the required changes to the vision screening schedule. The proposed revisions allow schools to conduct vision and hearing screenings at any time of the school year as long as the scheduling of such screenings is completed no later than the 60th administrative working day of the school year. It also provides schools with the option and flexibility to conduct vision and hearing screenings in second or third grade. The superintendent's recommendation to the board is to waive first review and approve the proposed revisions to the regulations governing the testing of sight and hearing of pupils, and upon the board's approval, submitted for executive review in accordance with the fast track provisions of the Administrative Process Act. I'm happy to answer any questions or take into account any concerns at this time.
Ms. Atkinson.
You probably don't like the fact that I read these things very carefully and have,
love the
and
fact
have a
that you read them so
history
carefully.
of understanding some of the things. So as I was reading this, if you look to the second paragraph, it says this screening of students will be monitored through the administrative review process. I was at the agency when we used to do administrative reviews. We haven't been doing those for, well over 20 years. And so just so that we conform the regulations to practice, I was hoping that we could make a change there. I don't think it would be controversial because I believe everybody knows that we're not doing those reviews, but there's a thing about me that what we have on paper should match what we do in reality.
Absolutely. We really appreciate the feedback. I was able to have my staff member, Tracy White, who's joining me today as our school health specialist, look at some proposed revisions to the language that would conform us to current practice. So Emily has provided a handout that shows a change to ensure that the alignment with current practice is reflected in the language. You'll see that change in the last sentence of that paragraph, where it will now state, this screening of students will be monitored through the department's annual data collection process. This also reflects the fact that this data collection moved to our single sign-on for web system data collection as of last year. So this language ensures that we're conforming to current practice, not only for submission, but also review of that information.
Can I make one more comment?
Please, yeah.
I just want to clarify one other thing. We do federal reviews. We don't do what we used to call administrative reviews, where we used to go into school divisions and look at the flagpole and the libraries and things of that sort. We just haven't done those since we revised the SOAs back in the 90s.
Okay. Anybody else with questions? And then I guess the request from the department is we waive first review. I don't know where you are on that, Ms. Atkinson. Okay. And adopt the proposed language. You had enough chance to review this? That's fine. Okay. No questions? Any questions? All right. Then is there a motion to waive first review and adopt as requested with the language change proposed?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Atkinson. Second, Dr. Duran. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Thank you very much. Item J, first review of a proposal to adopt special provisions related to the use of school quality indicators. Good morning. I'm glad some of the institutional knowledge has stayed with the department. It's been a tough morning.
Thank you. Good morning, President Gacker, members of the board, Dr. Lane. Today I come before you to bring for first review a proposal to adopt special provisions related to the use of school quality indicators. I'm going to begin by just providing a bit of background on the standards of accreditation and the new accreditation ratings for the benefit of the new board members. Under the 2017 revision to the standards for accrediting public schools, the accreditation ratings for schools are based on the performance level that a school earns on various school quality indicators. And the school quality indicators include academic indicators in English, math, and science, achievement gaps in English and math, chronic absenteeism, dropout rate, graduation and completion index, and so on. And on each of those indicators, a school is rated as level 1, which would be meeting the standard, level 2, which is approaching the standard, or level 3 does not meet the standard. And based on those indicators and those levels, the school's accreditation is then determined. Schools that have an indicator at level 3 or does not meet the standard must develop a corrective action plan under the guidance of the department, and those schools become accredited with conditions. Under the SOA, a school's performance level on particular indicators may be raised based on improvements to the indicator's rate from the previous year. Specifically, indicators rated as level 3 or does not meet the standard based on current data can move to level 2 or approaching the standard under the following conditions. On the academic indicators, if the current year's combined rate in English and mathematics or the pass rate in science was at least 50% and the failure rate was decreased by 10% from the previous year. On the chronic absenteeism indicator, if the chronic absenteeism rate was decreased by 10% from the previous year. On the dropout indicator, if the dropout rate was decreased by 10% from the previous year, or on the graduation and completion index, if the index increased by 2.5% over the previous year. However, schools that were determined to be new in the 2018-19 school year have no prior year data, and therefore they're unable to benefit from this flexibility. Instead, they are rated based on the current year data only. And so I come before you today to ask you to act to address this issue. The Standards for Accrediting Public Schools in Virginia does provide you with the authority to adopt special provisions related to the use of a school quality indicator in determining the accreditation status of schools. And so we are going to ask you to adopt special provisions today. The Superintendent of Public Instruction recommends that the board waive first review so that we can adopt these immediately and approve the following special provisions for schools that were new during the year in which the data used for accreditation were collected and that only have 1 year of data on which to evaluate the indicator performance levels. Specifically, if an academic indicator is rated at level 3 based on current year data, and the combined rate in English and mathematics or the pass rate in science is at least 50%, the indicator shall be rated level 2. If the chronic absenteeism, dropout rate, or graduation and completion rate indicators are rated level 3 based on current year data, the indicator shall be rated as level 2. And we are asking you to waive first review and adopt so that we can implement this flexibility before the accreditation ratings for 2019-20 are released next week. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Ask her to share one,
Please, yeah.
Just so the board has a sense of impact, how many schools would benefit from this new flexibility?
We would have 1 school that would benefit. It is a small number of schools. It is just schools that were new this past year.
Okay, any questions? Of course.
And I'm trying to find it in the document, but is the language in what the provisions that we are doing, the change that we would be making, is it specific to those schools that are new?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That's all I need to know. Thank you.
Anybody else? Dr. Duran?
Somewhat, a little bit unrelated, but for the college career and civic readiness indicator, which I know is coming in 2021, 2022, would this apply to that for schools that would be their first year with data, or would it just be for a new school? Because that'll be the first year that schools actually have data. Would it apply there or not?
I think that's something we would have to consider as we move forward because that indicator is not in place yet. We
Right.
did not address it in this particular action.
Anybody else? Don't see anybody else. So there's been a request that we waive first review and adopt this. Is there a motion to do so? Thank you, Ms. Atkins. Second, Dr. Wilson. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, I think the board
you
is.
very much.
Thank you very much. The board's going to take a quick break. We'll be back at 10 till 11.
No pun intended, right? All right. We're here today to talk to you a little bit about the guidelines we'd like to propose for our Capstone project. So before I begin, just going into a little bit of history here. Okay, so why are we here, right? So in 2019, there was a bill passed that is requiring students to complete a senior capstone project. And that bill was amended, and we were asked to present guidelines and for you guys to approve them. So the neat thing about the senior capstone, which I think that's in the legislation, is it really allows for a lot of flexibility, right? So in most states, they talk about a senior capstone project. And in Virginia, we're actually speaking to a senior capstone. And the flexibility is in the student choice, right? So they have the opportunity to pick between a project, a performance-based assessment, doing a portfolio, or some sort of structured experiment. It should be like a science research project where students have to complete an experiment and present on their findings. As you can see, this gives lots of choice to students. So let's say I have an art major. They have the choice to do a portfolio, which completely aligns to what they have to do in their college experience. And if I'm interested in science research, I can do a structured experiment. So that's pretty exciting about the legislation. So going back a little bit more, the history is we actually have 2 capstone courses that were approved by the Board of Education in 2011. But what makes these a little bit different than what we are proposing with a capstone is they are truly a course. They have some sort of content that has to be completed. Students are earning 2 verified credits. And when I go back a little bit more in the history and ask why did we do these, it was really truly for more remediation purposes. So to provide our students with maybe an alternative pathway towards graduation to get them to career and college. Whereas the capstone we present now is really to help our students demonstrate mastery of the 5 C's and to really see what they have learned in their overall school experience. So to go a little bit more deeply, I'm going to present Dr. Eshelman to you, and he is going to speak to you about the research, what other states are doing, and then talk to you a little bit about how we came up with the guidelines.
Good morning, President Gecker, members of the board, Dr. Lane. We have looked at other states, looking close to us in North Carolina, in Georgia. They do have a capstone project as a graduation requirement. Georgia has also included that in their version of their college and career readiness index score as well. We went and looked at California. They have this as a local option. So it is not required. It's a local decision. In the state of Washington, it was required from 2008 to 2015, and the legislation in 2015 removed the requirement, but it does remain a local option in the state of Washington. But when we look at Virginia, we know that Virginia is focused on every scholar needing a skill. But not all skills are demonstrated the same way. So if you're looking at a student with an assessment, whether it's a formative or summative assessment, that's one way of measuring a student's understanding and abilities. But we also know that work-based learning has played a major role. And what this agency has been focused on, increasing deeper learning opportunities. And work-based learning is just one of several options. So what we do like about this option is it provides additional experiences for students to be able to take their learning a little deeper, apply their knowledge in an integrated way. Just to give you some numbers and put this in context, if we looked at work-based learning alone, just in the county of Washington in Southwest Virginia, 1,113 work-based learning experiences would be needed for juniors and seniors. If we look at Northern Virginia, I'm not going to break down all of Northern Virginia, but it exceeds 61,000 work-based learning experiences. So what I do like about this is by following what we've been working with school divisions on, by providing deeper learning and looking at additional options, we can meet the expectation of providing those work-based learning experiences, because place-based learning is really about engaging the community. And through a senior capstone, a student could do that. So what is a capstone? A capstone is defined as a multifaceted assignment that serves as a culminating academic experience and usually takes place in their student's senior year. It can take the form of many different options, but the capstone projects are designed to encourage critical thinking, problem solving, and the development of communication, research, and collaboration skills, as you can tell, very similarly aligned to our 5 Cs. Capstones also require students to engage with the community or society issues. They encourage students to be challenging, and they last at least 18 weeks or a semester. They should require considerable effort on the part of the student, showing the application of the content. So the benefits are ongoing. So what have we done? On August 14th, the VDOE convened a group of educators from various professional organizations and school divisions. The agency began drafting the guidelines before you based on their feedback, along with information and research from other states, Virginia governor schools, existing VDOE capstone courses, along with additional research. So attachment A includes a draft of the guidelines developed in the August meeting. While senior capstones take a variety of forms from school to school and from course to course, a few examples are highlighted as we mentioned earlier, through a capstone project, through a portfolio, a performance-based assessment, or a structured experiment. What are our next steps? After today, we will share feedback that we received today and host an additional meeting on September 25th. A larger group of stakeholders will convene to review the revised draft. It is our desire to expand the participation to include more businesses. We do have commitments from the following school divisions: Cumberland, Fairfax, Henry, Loudoun, Frederick, Shenandoah, Richmond City, Washington, Augusta, Nottoway, and Virginia Beach. Institutions of higher education, along with other Virginia Department of Ed staff, educational partners from VEA, VAS, VASCD, VASCL, VASP, VAESP, CERN, the Virginia Advanced Studies Strategies, and the Virginia CTE Advisory Board. And we have a long list of additional businesses that will join us on the 25th. The timetable for further review, based on the feedback we received from the meeting scheduled on the 25th, a second review of the capstone guidelines are scheduled for your October meeting on the 17th. Upon approval, the Department of Education will submit guidelines, report to the chairman of the House Committee on Education and the Senate Committee on Education and Health by November 1st. At this time, we open it up for discussion and any questions that you may have.
Ms. Atkinson.
Still good morning. Thank you for your presentation. I find this very interesting. When we were doing the portrait of a Virginia graduate, the capstone was one thing that we looked at. I recall that we had a presentation by a division, and I cannot remember which division it is, that had a capstone project requirement in Virginia. And one of the takeaways that I had from that was for them to be able to do that, it took quite a bit of commitment of time and resources on behalf of the division to gear up to staff it for the students. I don't see anything like that reflected in these guidelines, and I'm wondering if it would make sense if we're sending these out to divisions and they're really starting to think about, well, I would like to do this, if we could give them some information in addition about things that they should be looking at if they want to gear up and start a project, not just a project, but each of those components. And so I would just put that out there.
Thank you. It's valuable.
Okay. As I understand it, this whole thing is subject to reenactment. In other words, it doesn't take effect unless they reenact this coming year.
That is correct.
And so might it be appropriate for us to weigh in on what we think the merits of this proposal are? In other words, does the board believe that this is an appropriate path for the Commonwealth, or is this, something that exceeds what we think ought to be directed by the state at this time? And not a question necessarily for you two, but it is a question for the board. It is an opportunity to weigh in on the policy matter, which again, constitutionally is our purview. And although not expecting an answer today, before we transmit proposed guidelines, I would like to at least address the issue of whether this board believes that this is good policy to implement and statewide, and perhaps, impact the legislation as it moves forward through the 2020 session. Please.
For clarification, the reason this is coming before us, and it was a matter of discussion at the General Assembly for us to consider, is because of the work-based requirement and the capacity of communities to meet that requirement. Is that correct? I was just basing it off of your summary with work-based learning, and like just taking Washington County for an example, and you mentioned another community in Northern Virginia, the capacity for to actually have students going into the work-based. This was a way to address that, because they may not have the capacity, or what? No?
I'm not privy to the history behind why the bill was drafted.
Right.
So maybe Emily can speak to that.
Well, I guess I want to put it in context, your introduction, like how you explain that. So that was kind of my takeaway. So I apologize for that. So.
Sure, I can help provide a little bit of context from the bill from this past session. Delegate Landis, who's the patron on the bill, was interested in some kind of senior project. He initially was interested in some kind of community service project for seniors. And once staff went and talked to them, he was really most interested in some kind of capstone project, something that would kind of demonstrate the 5 C's for divisions, and something that would really get a student out into the community, not just necessarily within their school. And so we worked with him on some language to provide some flexibility within not just necessarily a senior capstone project, but it could be some kind of performance-based assessment, portfolio, structured experiment, et cetera, to give divisions flexibility on what they would have to do with their group of seniors. At the very end of session, really at the 11th hour, this reenactment was put on it and to develop these guidelines. So that was something we were not involved in as part of the technical assistance that staff offered to the General Assembly on this bill. So I think, it would be up to the board's prerogative on what they want to do with these guidelines. We were kind of surprised that we had to do it on this quick of a timeline, because it's traditionally something that they would pass, and then the board would then work for a couple of years with school divisions to develop guidelines for full implementation. So I don't know if that helps at all with some background.
Please.
I guess I wondered if Ms. Atkins' question was more trying to understand how does this interact with the profile of a Virginia graduate requirement that will now have students participating in work-based experiences. I didn't hear in the response clearly how this intersects with that, and I wondered if that was the question you were getting at.
Looking at some of the states that we reviewed, they have included the work-based learning experience, and what the way it was worded was work-based learning and or senior capstone.
Yeah.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
So when we passed the Portrait of a Virginia Graduate, and knowing the language that we put in there and the language that's in the standards of accreditation, we really created quite a bit of flexibility. And you also see that a little bit in our when we're going to start to use it as an indicator, because we recognized that across the Commonwealth, there needed to be time for the capacity to be built, which is sort of in some sense my comment about these guidelines, and not really addressing what divisions might have to do to develop the capacity to do any of those options. And then I guess I'd have another. So I know Virginia right now, and I think the board talked about at some point we might go down the road of being more stringent as time has passed, and we recognize schools have had divisions have had the time to really get some of that up and running. You see us looking at it in the context of the SOQ and putting somebody here at the department to help school divisions create that capacity. So I don't believe we believe every child's going to have a work-based experience right away, but we've given divisions options as to how students can have a similar type experience, whether it is volunteer work that they do, so we were pretty broad. So I think we're sort of on the front end of a journey that will get us to introducing more students to that type of experience.
And I do see this as complementary to the board's previous work on the standards of accreditation. As Mrs. Atkinson said, the board did consider a senior capstone project when we were working on the profile of Virginia graduate. And I will also note that the language is permissive that the board add this into graduation requirements. So the board would still have the authority to change their SOA again to add this to graduation requirements if this bill does get reenacted through the General Assembly this year.
I would just like to add that I see this work as complementing the work that we have and are doing with the 5 Cs. Giving flexibility to the school divisions, I think, would be critical to make sure that these extended opportunities to provide deeper learning, the senior capstone as an example, plus any of the other 11 forms of work-based learning that we are currently doing. So having that flexibility, I think, would be beneficial.
Okay, anybody else? If not, I guess we have received this for a review, and we'll come back in October and figure out where we're going.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, item L, report from the State Special Education Advisory Committee.
President Gecker, Vice President Atkinson, members of the board, and Dr. Lane, it's my pleasure to join you again, particularly for this item today, as I welcome up representatives of your State Special Education Advisory Committee. As Jill and Christine get settled, I want to make sure to thank my staff. Across my department, multiple staff support the work of this very important committee. However, I have my director, Hank Millward, here, and my specialist for family engagement, Tracy Lee, a Governor's Award winner, by the way, here to support our work. So a big thank you to my folks. But I would like to introduce you to our chair, Christine Germeyer, who is our parent representative for Region 4, and our vice chair, Jill Sowers-Becker, who is a representative for the Virginia Department of Juvenile Justice. I'm going to hand it off into the very capable hands of these ladies, and they will let me know if they need me.
Thank you very much.
Great.
Thank you. Good morning, President Gecker, Dr. Lane, members of the board. Thank you for having us this morning to receive the State Special Education Advisory Committee's annual report for July 2018 through June 2019. We exist as various stakeholder groups as prescribed by the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. We include member representatives, parents from each of the superintendent's 8 regions. We have a teacher representative, my colleague beside me, a representative from the Department of Juvenile Justice, the Department of Social Services. We also have a superintendent representative, a special education director, a teacher representative, transition, foster care. We have a big, cumbersome group made of 23 committee members. We're very collaborative, and when we get ignited, we become very engaged with the issues. Our administrative year runs from July 1 through June 30th, and we have 5 subcommittees that include our executive, our nominating, our policy and regulations, our student achievement and student outcomes, and our newest one that was created last year, our family engagement and community outreach. Our meetings are held in Richmond. At each of the meetings, there is an opportunity for the committee to receive public comment. And the following topics were heard over the course of the year that pertain to individualized education programs having to do with parental rights, the native language, IEP roles, and the McKinney-Vento transportation. We also heard about local special education advisory committees, the parent participation and best practices. Other topics included diploma statistics, trauma-informed care, service animals, chronic absenteeism, and the Every Student Succeed Acts implementation in Virginia. Additionally, there is an opportunity for each of the 23 committee representatives to offer their constituency report at each meeting. The committee works towards identifying the common themes across the groups. The most prevalent or reoccurring topics centered around parent and family engagement and the local SEAC practices. Transition, not just at the high school level, but all throughout an individual's academic career, starting at the early ages, pre-K. Staffing shortages, most critical. That it wasn't only just the teachers, but paraprofessionals, service providers, psychologists, behavior analysts, speech language pathologists, numerous staffing shortages across the Commonwealth. We also heard about funding and the impact that funding and the lack of funding was having an impact on our students.
Okay, we heard many presentations this year, and on page 4 and 5 of the full report, there's a comprehensive list of all of the presentations we heard. Listed here are just some of the presentations, and we'd like to highlight first the Virginia is for Learners, which was presented by Dr. Lane, Superintendent of Public Instruction. This presentation focused on maximizing the potential of all students. We were informed about multisensory structured literature instruction and VDOE mathematic initiatives. VDOE also shared updates on inclusive practices, trauma-informed care, and equity. The Back to Basics initiative was introduced with a plan to train teachers and parents across the regions, and we received several updates throughout the year on seclusion and restraint regulations. We'd like to commend the Board of Education and the Virginia Department of Ed for the ongoing opportunities and partnerships over the last several years and the following initiatives. First, for a 7th consecutive year, Virginia has earned the U.S. Department of Education's highest rating for improving outcomes and IDEA compliance for students with disabilities. Supporting the Virginia is for Learners initiative. Hosting a teacher retention summit. Next, developing a pilot program to support first-year special education teachers. Focusing on equity and closing achievement gaps. Adopting the special permission credit accommodation, allowing students with disabilities an additional opportunity to earn locally awarded verified credits. Presenting critical decision points, training for teachers and parents of students with disabilities throughout Virginia. Also included in the full report under accommodations on page 6 and 7 is a list of ongoing opportunities, partnerships, and initiatives that the Board of Ed and Virginia Department of Education have supported over the last several years.
So while the percentage of students with disabilities receiving a standard or advanced diploma has increased in Virginia, there are remaining concerns surrounding the number of students who cannot meet the requirements for the standard or advanced diploma. The State Special Education Advisory Committee recommends the Board of Education continue to support the work of the State Systemic Improvement Plan. The State Special Education Advisory Committee is in agreement with the Board of Education's priority to make each individual, including students with disabilities, life-ready, successful citizens who can participate in the global economy. The State Special Education Advisory Committee recognizes the Board of Education's success in revising the standards of quality to increase graduation rates. However, many barriers remain. To the maximum extent possible, students with disabilities should be educated with students who do not have disabilities in the least restrictive environment. With public comments, constituency reports, and presentations to the State Special Education Advisory Committee, we present the following recommendations. Continue efforts to address the teacher, staff, and other professional support shortages by exploring available funding resources and partnerships. Create additional, more advanced modules for dyslexia, dysgraphia, and other specific learning disabilities. Consider more in-depth training. Ensure that adequate training and resources are available to support the implementation of the regulations governing the use of seclusion and restraint in public elementary and secondary schools in Virginia. Update best practice guidance documents and provide training for local special education advisory committees, and share existing resources and involve the State Special Education Advisory Committee in collaboration with the Virginia Department of Education for training and follow-up. Revise the Parents' Guide to Special Education and develop various versions, including video and multimodal formats. As a follow-up to the Critical Decision Points Guide and training, enhance opportunities for family engagement by developing an online module companion video for parents to learn more about their rights. The State Special Education Advisory Committee appreciates the opportunity to present these recommendations to the Board of Education and hopes that they will be considered and implemented as deemed appropriate without delay. While we recognize the many competing requests for resources, we feel that these requests are reasonable. On behalf of the State Special Education Advisory Committee, I thank you once again for your time and for the opportunity to share our report with each of you. You are welcome to join us at our next upcoming meeting on Thursday, October 3rd. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for the work and for the recommendations. And are there any questions or comments from board members? Dr. Duran.
Just a comment. Thank you very much for your thoughtful recommendations, and we appreciate the collaborative of the 23 representatives coming together and sharing with us these recommendations. So my comment to you is just thanks. And I question, Dr. Hollins, how might we, or what's the plan for looking at these recommendations and then providing the board some feedback or some potential actions on these?
Thank you very much. The board I'm sure will be pleased to hear that the department has already started working with staff and with representatives of RCEC to move many of these forward. As you can see, many of them are already in existence. It's really just in increasing the reach that the department has on issuing best practice and guidance. And we're currently in discussion, particularly with the Office of Facilities and Family Engagement, on how we can increase not only the critical decision points training, but leverage the resources we have, like our collaborative partnership with our state PTI, which is PTSI, the Parent Education Advocacy Training Center, to include more access points for parents so that in-person training isn't the only way to hear this information. They can download a really short video on their phone and get more information, as well as digging deeper into, once approved, the regulations governing the use of physical restraint in public schools. So we're very excited about the work. We have many different things coming up on our upcoming agenda to further this, and we'll be happy to bring back the board updates and encourage you to participate in the work of this advisory committee as well as the department staff work.
Thank you. And that was very helpful. I appreciate the additional information. I would love to see, though, maybe moving forward, that we have a report from you on how these recommendations, more for the public also, to put out what have we done thus far around these recommendations, what more can we do, and if there are things for us to consider at this table, that we would have some discussion around that. So you just outlined a lot of great work that I think the public should know is happening, but also there may be some ongoing work. And since we've received this very thoughtful report that's been put together by such a collective group, I think it would be great to report back out to the public what we are doing and how we are addressing those two sets of recommendation pages.
Ms. Holton.
Yeah, I just want to say, number one, thank you for your thoughtful work all year long, and particularly for these recommendations. I'm particularly excited about the proposal to revise the current Parents' Guide for Special Education, which, if I remember correctly, weighs in at 64 pages.
It's quite lengthy.
For parents. And that partly obviously reflects the complexity of our law, and maybe that's a different topic, but I'm hoping you can find ways to use modern technology to make it more accessible and usable. So I appreciate that suggestion and echo Dr. Duran's request that we hear back on progress. My other question would be, did you all hear or have you thought about and considered, I'm sure you have at some point, but do you have any advice for us on the topic of disparate discipline of students with disabilities vis-a-vis compared to students without disabilities, and also within students with disabilities, the disparate discipline of students of color? And if you've looked at it, we'd love to hear your recommendations. And if you've not looked at it, I'd encourage you to look at it and come back to us with some thoughts at the appropriate time.
Okay. I would defer to Dr. Hollins.
Yeah, and that's actually a very timely topic. The committee has expressed a great deal of interest in learning more during their upcoming meetings this year, particularly around the topics of social emotional learning, given the department's commitment to the Castle Regional States Collaborative Program. But we also have some great examples that we'll be trying to bring in from the local division perspective around trauma-informed care, restorative justice, and a focus on what positive behavioral supports and implementation actually look like, boots on the ground. Many of our committee members, as you can tell, are parents or from other agencies. While we do have a great deal of support from our teacher and superintendent representative, we really feel it'd be helpful for them to see some illustrations of what this work looks like in local school divisions. So I'm excited to further that conversation and look forward to additional recommendations and information we can bring back to the board.
Dr. Mann.
Thank you for your report. I had one question I was curious about, and that had to do with, does the committee have insight on understanding? You referenced the lack of access to other professionals, support professionals. I'm curious about what you understand about that. Is there a lack of production in support professionals that are needed to partner with educators around supporting children with special needs, or is it the lack of resources to pay for services? I'm just curious about, we hear a lot about the teacher shortage side of things. I'd like to appreciate if the committee has explored sort of what might be underneath the lack of access to other professionals. Is it production or the issue of funds to pay for such services?
I would say from my vantage point, what I've noticed from the committee members is that it's a combination of both, that it's not just limited funding that allows divisions to bring these outside resources in, but the lack that there aren't many available in certain divisions. So it's a combination of both.
Yeah, and I'd pair that. It's more of the ability to hire people because there's not a lot of people or a reduced number of people in those fields such as speech. It's difficult in some of the more remote areas of Virginia to find licensed professionals. And so I know VDOE is working on that as well as the board. I heard that today for the teacher shortage, but not only the shortages of professionals, licensed professionals in those fields.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, item M is the written report. Then we move on. Are there any current issues that the board would like to discuss? Seeing none. Okay, executive session. You want to take a break? No?
Let's get started because we just broke out.
Okay. What?
I don't know what the structure is, who's coming, what's happening. I'm trying to figure out how long it's going to take.
All right, we'll go away. We'll take 5, and we'll be back in. For us, 5 means 10, and so we'll be back in 5 minutes. Quick break. We organize over the executive session. Yeah, we'll take 3. Not quite, I'm sorry. Dr. Paxton. Back in session. Ms. Atkinson.
I move that pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711A40, the Virginia Board of Education convene in a closed meeting for the purpose of discussion and consideration of records relating to denial, suspension, or revocation of teacher licenses, and that Susan Williams, legal counsel to the Virginia Board of Education, as well as staff members Dr. James Lane, Patty Pitts, Nancy Walsh, Kevin Foster, and Tanya Kish, whose presence will aid in the board's consideration of this matter, participate in the closed meeting.
Okay, we have motions. Is there a second? Second. Thank you, Dr. Wilson. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, we are in executive session.